This garden cage from Steve is really awesome and has some really cool features that we're going to talk about in today's video. I'm going to break it down using the iPad, and I've also got a miniature model of the build that I'll showcase how this thing goes together and how you can recreate it if you want to protect your garden with this really awesome idea. So essentially, this entire thing is made out of 3/4 inch EMT conduit, and Steve built it to fit around his raised garden beds, as we can see here, these steel ones here. And he used maker pipe connectors, which are fittings that we manufacture in upstate South Carolina, so you can build things like this out of EMT conduit. And you don't have to do any welding. It's just all using some simple hand tools, and the connectors are friction-based, and so you don't have to do any welding, like I said, or use any power tools or anything like that. And essentially, this is the framework on the outside, as we can see, whenever it's in kind of protection mode, we'll call it, whenever he wants to protect the crops inside from any pest or any animals that are trying to get inside and get to his plants that he's growing inside there. But essentially, he made this entire frame, and I think there's another photo we can look at to kind of see the construction of the frame better, but I just kind of gave away the surprise where I guess you saw it in the thumbnail. But this thing folds up both sides. The panels basically just fold all the way up and turns into this Lamborghini style door on the side, so you have all this access to the garden and you don't have to worry about adding a gate or anything like that. And the way that he accomplished this was actually really surprising, and we'll talk more about that as we break it down. But first, we'll just kind of highlight the main part of the frame. So essentially what you've got is 4 verticals on the outside of the garden bed, as we can see here. And the thing to note with these is that they're sticking up a few inches off the top of the garden bed, up there and there. And so the reason that this is able to hinge, we'll talk about, is really key for those verticals being able to go all the way through the connectors here. And that's just one of the benefits of using the maker pipe connectors and using the 90-degree connector specifically in these corners here, to essentially create this design that allowed the vertical to run continuously through the middle of the connector, and then it creates this corner rectangle where the piece of conduit terminates there inside the connector, and then terminates there inside the connector, and then goes out and then goes to the other side of the frame where it does the same thing repeated on this side in those 90-degree connectors there. And so essentially, if you're making any kind of cube or rectangle, that's the way to do it. Just use those 90-degree connectors in the corners. And he actually did the exact same thing down here, just 4 more 90-degree connectors to create this bottom rung around the cube at the very bottom. So that's really simple overall. And then he also just added in some bracing here for this main part of the frame using the 45-degree connector from Maker Pipe, which essentially just allows you to add angled bracing to support your projects. You know, a lot of people say EMT conduit isn't strong enough for builds and structural things, and it's not really meant to be used for those things, which is why we made the connector system, so you could build projects and then utilize different ones like the 45-degree connector to brace it and make it strong enough for your projects. So essentially, he just used the 45-degree connectors to add several braces. We got one there in the corner, one back there in that corner, one there, and then he also did something similar where he did adjustable angle connectors, which work similarly to the 45, except you're able to adjust the angle and not just lock it in at a 45 degree. And then we've got here is just this angled piece of conduit there that goes all the way down, and that is just bracing the side walls there. So now that's the main part of the frame, and you could essentially stop there if you wanted and then just cover this whole thing with enclosure material and then come up with a door if you wanted, or just make it where you fold the enclosure material back and then be able to access your plants. But he didn't stop there. He actually made this into something even cooler, which is just really awesome. I love it. And the way that he did this is basically these side panels are made to fold up and down. And he accomplished this with the Maker Pipe adjustable angle connector. And that's the one that we were just highlighting, but you can lock that in, as we see over here, for that brace that we just highlighted. And instead of just using it for a brace and locking it in place, you can also leave it loose and use it as an adjustable hinge here. So you can leave the top half of the connector loose, and then the bottom half will hinge and rotate. So because the vertical post here is running continuously through the 90 and sticking up a few inches, he just grabbed onto that vertical with the adjustable angle hinge and then created a 2-dimensional rectangle up here, and that is the panel that folds down, and then here we can see it's kind of folded up. And essentially, as we highlighted, you can make cubes with a 90-degree connector, but these are the T connectors, which allow you to connect 2 pieces of conduit, and there's what you should use if you're making just a 2-dimensional rectangular panel, as we can see here. And then what he did, I believe, is it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, he's got a T connector on here, and he just added a friction band around the bottom of the connector, or some electrical tape around the piece of conduit. And this allowed him to, tighten this bottom piece of conduit that acts as the vertical, leave that in place, but then be able to hinge the top part of the connector. So if you leave it just a little loose, it'll still secure that in place, and then you can hinge it still and rotate it around the conduit. And I'm fairly certain that's how he accomplished these legs here for this. And essentially, that is the panels. We can see some more bracing there. And I'll show you the mini model and how this functions here in a second. But just want to highlight really quickly that he put 1/2-inch hardware cloth around the framework to act as the enclosure material. And then he's got some, it looks like in his post he said steel zip ties holding that in place. And then it looks like he put some Velcro over top of that, maybe just to kind of protect it or keep it from, I don't know really actually, to be honest, but maybe to keep it from, yeah, I'm not really sure why he put the Velcro straps over top of it. Maybe just extra security, but I'm pretty sure he said stainless steel zip ties. But yeah, if you're watching, I'd love to know why you use those specifically on top of them or in addition to. But really awesome job. And then let's go to the mini model here, and we'll just kind of highlight how this functions. So essentially, we got this main rectangle that I highlighted using all the 90-degree connectors. Here's the 45-degree bracing, all that kind of stuff. And if you don't know, these are miniature connectors that you can use to model out your project, and they work with coffee stirrers, and you can see exactly how your project's going to go together and plan out everything. And essentially, this is the adjustable angle hinge connector that allows you to basically rotate this up. And then, of course, we got the T connectors that hinge down for the legs for the front here, and then you've got that panel that you can then fold up and down. So you fold that up, or fold that down, fold it up, of course, and then there you go. You've got your adjustable enclosure, and you can make this and get access to your garden, that's really the goal. Honestly, it's cool and all, but really, ultimately, it solves a huge problem. You don't have to have a small gate that you're trying to work inside of and get into your crops. You can actually access the whole garden from both sides with this technique, and that is just really cool and awesome. So really appreciate him sharing this, and just really, really cool build. So thanks so much for sharing this, Steve. And if you want to see this post, and then you can check that out in the description. If you have any comments or questions, leave those down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.